1045 The Team, 1045theteam.com. On the phone right now, it's Connor Hall, one of the contributing writers and an interview specialist at 518 Sports. So we've had this story before. We've talked to Connor before. We talked to Dylan Rossiter, who's the founder of 518 Sports and 518sports.com. Connor, when this whole thing started for you guys, I really thought you guys were just, high school kids who wanted to be journalists and you were going to get some good local coverage and things like that. I didn't know that we were going to become competitors and you were going to try to take my job away. What are you doing now?
I mean, that wasn't the intention at all. We're just trying to get our names out in the journalism world and do our best to cover everything, just like the guys who have a job in the sports journalism world do. And we're trying to get a head start on the whole sports journalism wind and really just get the stories out to people.
I mean, so what are you doing now, though? Like, this went beyond, you're now beyond just writing for 518sports.com and covering local high school events in Siena, Albany. Now you're doing phone interviews.
Yeah, I've done a bunch of phone interviews already, and, it was an idea that I thought of really just to learn people's stories, and that's one of the best things that comes from those is really every single interview person that you talk to has a different story, and that's what I like about it. And I wasn't expecting to get anybody big, really just, I was going for the local guys like Jamie Schultz and Kevin Smith, and then I took the chance and reached out to Jameel Warney of Stony Brook, who's working out for a couple NBA teams, Philip Tanner, an NBA analyst, and then I got Chris Herron coming up next week. So I wasn't expecting to get this much positive feedback from it, but I have, and I've loved it so far.
I've heard Chris Herron speak in person. That's powerful stuff. He's got a great story, and your listeners will enjoy getting that out there as well. Connor, this has been Regents Week, though. You're a three-sport athlete at Maple Hill. You're a student, and now you're doing all this stuff on the side. Like, do you ever do your homework? Are your Regents grades going to be good?
Yeah, homework always comes first, and then whenever I can find some free time in the night after all my sports and homework and stuff is really when I try and get it done, even if it's just for an hour or so. And mainly weekends is when I do a lot of these interviews, but really whenever the people want to talk.
Now, I know that you're playing baseball this summer. I'm sure you're playing hoop, getting ready for next season at Maple Hill. I'm sure you're playing soccer, getting ready for that season when it starts in the fall as well. So what are you going to do this summer as far as journalism goes? Because, look, there's obviously no more high school games to be had. What are you going to cover this summer, or are you on a break period now?
We're going to work on covering a lot of the Albany Dutchman games and the Valley Cats games as an organization, and we'll try and get up to the track a couple times as long as the NYRA accepts our credentials. And, this summer I'm trying to get some more interviews with a lot of people and, just continue what I've been doing throughout this year.
What are the things that you hope to learn about more? Like, what are the sports that you think you need to learn about more? How do you want to continue to grow? Because, look, let's be real. People in sports journalism, you don't have to know, everything about everything. You have to know a little bit about everything, and we all have our strong points and our weak points. What are the things that you hope to learn through doing this, through going through the process, and the sports you hope to get better at covering?
I hope to get better at covering everything besides baseball and basketball, because baseball and basketball are sort of my strong suits. I play both of them, so I tend to know a little bit more about them. But I really wanted to start getting into covering more football, maybe lacrosse games, and, one of the rising trends is field hockey in the Capital Region, so perhaps if a professional team ever comes to the Capital Region, I want to be ready to cover whatever sport comes.
Connor Hall, Maple Hill student athlete, Maple Hill student journalist with us, also works for 518 Sports and 518sports.com. He's with us on 1045 The Team. Now, when we last spoke in the fall, you had an impressive list of people you had met and gotten to interview. That list has grown since then. Now we're on Jay Bilas you met, I know.
Yeah, when I was covering the MAC championships for 518 Sports, championship game, the ESPN crew was there of Jay Bilas and Dan Schulman, and it never really caught my mind until I was in the car on the way there, and I was like, Jay Bilas is really going to be at the Times Union Center, so I showed up a little bit early and asked him for a picture and talked with him a little bit. He's a very humble guy, and he was great to meet.
Now, what are your goals long-term again? You said you're trying to get a head start on other people that want to be sports journalists. You and I have talked before. You said your goal was to be a Sports Center anchor. Is that still the goal, or are you now looking at some other things?
Well, that's the overall goal, but obviously there's some stepping stones in between. In college, I'd like to work with a good organization as an intern and then really work my way up from there, whether it's starting at the radio level, at the print level, on the sidelines, anything that'll get me jump-started and obviously get me to the ultimate goal of being a Sports Center anchor.
Who's one person in the business that you would like to get advice from? Or if you could sit down with one sports journalist and just pick their brain for an hour, who would it be and why?
I would have to go with either Buster Olney or Scott Van Pelt. And I'll start with Buster Olney. Whenever I'm watching a baseball game on ESPN, he always has the best stats. And, some of the people who call the game try to come up with stats, but you can sort of tell after a little while that they're not really them coming up with them. It's really just somebody else in the background getting them. But Buster Olney, he convinces you that the stats are his, and that's what I like about him. And he really has the stories that you don't typically see when listening to a game. Look, they did a great story on Brandon Crawford the other day of how he came from the San Francisco area, and he's sort of been a lifelong Giants fan, and now he's playing as a shortstop. That's stuff that you don't typically see, and that's what I like about Buster Olney. And on the Scott Van Pelt, since he started his nighttime Sports Center show, I cannot help but tune into it. It's incredible. He's got very touching stories. He goes very in-depth with every single story, and, he's very unbiased, which is what every journalism person has to try and strive for. But Scott Van Pelt, I think, does a very good job of being unbiased when covering sports.
Both of those guys are great. Buster Olney, you can hear on our station every Thursday with Levack and Wolf right here on 104.5 The Team and 104.5theteam.com. We are on the phone right now. Connor Hall, Maple Hill student-athlete, Maple Hill student journalist, and a guy who eventually might be taking my spot someday somewhere down the line. So, Connor, hey, it's a competition now apparently, so best of luck, and we'll see you down the road.
Thanks for having me, Brady.